Okay, we need a motion to adopt the agenda. Justice Harbison, would you use the mic, please?
Thank you. I move that we adopt the agenda as printed.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Okay, number 3 on the agenda, the juvenile detention report is Jean Mack, please.
Good evening. Well, if you all had a chance to review the statistical reports, you can see how high our numbers are. And I don't know why. So if that's a next question, we really just don't. Everything is up from days served to number of intakes and length of stay. The length of stay is skewed by the adult charged youth because they do stay longer than the juveniles. So I'll entertain any questions if anyone has anything.
Are there any questions?
So we don't know why it's high, right? But normally do we collect data that allows us to know why something is increasing?
If you can look on the charges and see what charges the youth are being held for, we have a lot of probation violations. We are getting ready to begin our youth summer camp in correlation with juvenile court. So we'll do 3 weeks this year. Ordinarily, we did 2. Last year, we only did 1 because we didn't have that many kids. But now we're seeing the younger kids coming in, so I'm thinking it's just kind of a trend. Our older kids are aging out, and now we're starting with the younger ones again. So we'll do 3 weeks of the summer intense program and hope to keep the kids busy through the summer.
So are the older kids staying out of jail, though?
I hope so, but
Okay.
we'll see. A lot of our youth that are in our evening reporting center through the juvenile court are doing very well. So Ms. Norma can tell you more about that with her statistical reporting.
Do we keep any data on the kids that go through the evening reporting center?
Yes, Ms. Norma does.
Okay, so I'll get with her.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Sheriff's Office. The first one is the Enforcement Activity Report. Chief Deputy Jay Cantrell. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jay Cantrell. I'm the Chief Deputy down at the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and I'll be going over our enforcement report, and then Major Denzer will follow me with the jail report. Nothing really big this month in the enforcement division. We did go down to Crawford County with our one of our drones and offered them drone support to monitor one of the levees down at Kibler that they were afraid was going to breach. And fortunately, the river receded and the levee held, so they were in a situation there where they would have had about, I think, 70 or 80 homes in under 7 feet of water in about 6 hours had that levee breached. So they were checking it, and it was not stable enough to go out to personally check it, so we were able to do that with our drone, and it worked out really good. Speaking of drones, we recently received our certification that we can fly those, that we have our regulations, and so that we're certified to fly a drone, part of the FAA regulations. And so that was kind of a big accomplishment to get that through Washington and get it signed, and so we're excited to have that. But besides that, we're just moving along at a pretty regular pace in our enforcement division.
Any questions? Justice Duncan?
What are the drones used for?
We use them for surveillance, for large crowd events. We used them recently for an affidavit for a search warrant, that we had a report there was some stolen equipment on some property, but we couldn't see that. It was kind of behind a line of trees, so we were able to use the drone to go up and to verify what we had heard from a confidential informant, that there was in fact equipment back there, and enabled us to get a search warrant to go back, and we recovered a backhoe stolen out of Siloam Springs. So yeah, looking for lost persons, whether children or adults or somebody that might be lost. It's got infrared capabilities, so it's got a lot of uses, and it's fairly quick to deploy. So we're happy that we've got that in our toolbox.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Major Densler.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name's Randall Denzer. I'm a jail administrator. And kind of like what Jeannie Mac said, all the numbers are up. You can see our intakes, our state prisoners, and then all that is gaining. Probably the biggest thing is transport miles. You know, it's up about 4,000 miles. Seems like we're full-time out-of-state traveling. We left today for California and Arizona. And so a lot of these people are getting caught in other places, and we have to go get them. And then a few other numbers that are always about how many we got sleeping on the floor. Today we got 88, but the Friday, Memorial Day weekend, nothing big going on, no holidays. Nothing else. Saturday morning, we had 58 people to book, in booking. And that's a very dangerous situation. You know, how many people does it take to fight 58 people? You know, this is the first bunch of drunks and people causing problems, and, you know, there's really no reason for this to happen. Well, that day, they booked 113 in and out, and our high count we've ever had was 770. So, you know, I feel like these numbers are growing. You know, they're population driven. You know, people are moving in here every day. And it's starting to show on our numbers. It's gaining and gaining and gaining. Hadn't went back. We've been in the 700s on high count. And, you know, that day too, let me back up here. That day we had, when it was all said and done, got everybody in to stay, we had 100 on the floor. But that was just a typical Friday for, you know, no reason at all. That's what, you know, usually if you have a reason, it's not so bad. A ball game, you know, some big event or something's going on. This was just a regular Friday night, Saturday morning.
The main numbers for daily average appear to have taken a jump. Is there an explanation for that?
I think it's like I say, just population driven, more people moving in. Of course, you know, maybe the rain let up a little bit and people could actually get out, but nothing, you know, nothing right off. Just
Justice Harbison?
Of course, I'm interested in the pretrial people, and I was looking at your chart for 7 years, and it looks like we held around a little over 200 pretrial people until about 2013, and then it started creeping up to now that we are, you know, have 400 most days in pretrial people. Is that correct?
yes, ma'am. Yeah, that's when it started taking off. It was 200 was kind of the magic number for pretrial, and then once it took off, and, you know, I think it relies on the growth, how many people's moving in. That you know, these last couple weeks, you know, pretrial 4.25, 430, 435. You know, we're still turning loose these 200 people a month. So it's, you know, you add 770 and 200, our count is growing. You know, it's been a year now, even year on this 200 a month we're turning loose. And that's going to grow, I think, above 200.
I'm trying, what happened in, you know, besides increase in population? Was there a change in the court system? Is that when the district courts, when we had these 4 people that were elected to the district courts?
And 8.1s.
So we started getting an increase of pretrial people then. You know, I know your argument of increase in population, but I think we have something else there too. So, and I just kind of noticed that on this 7-year chart that you had fixed, that's 4.5. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Justice Duncan?
Randall, can you add on 4.3 through 4.5, can you add just the numbers above each bullet point by month?
I don't have that with me.
No, no, I'm talking about for future reporting. So like for next month, could you just add where you have like the line chart that shows and plots out by month?
Okay,
Can you just have numbers on each? So then I can do a
Yes.
percent change and see that too.
okay.
And then second, on the individual sleeping on the floor, how many women are sleeping on the floor right now?
I'll have to add that up, but I think somewhere around 40.
And then how many men are sleeping on the floor? You said there's 88,
Like
so
today,
48.
yeah, so yeah, about 40, yes.
Okay.
It just fluctuates, from time to time.
And then on Madison County inmates, my understanding is we do house inmates for Madison County. Do you know how many inmates we currently have?
Yeah, I think today we had 23.
And then how many of those were men and how many were women?
I don't have that broke out. Usually 5 or 6 females and the rest are males. It's usually 20, 25, 19, 25 is usually the average.
Are any of those inmates taking up a multi-bed room? I guess they have the cells that are 2, 3, and 4 beds, and you have one individual who can't get along with whoever else, so they have to be stuck in a room by themselves. Is that the case for any of the Madison County inmates?
Very, very seldom, because these people most of them are already committed, and we have a few pretrial, but most of them are committed, and we don't have an issue.
Okay. So it seems to me that if we have 23 from Madison County, that would free up almost half of, if majority of those are men, that would free up half of the guys sleeping on the floor if we didn't hold Madison County inmates. That would take away half of our issue there, and then we just have to figure out the other half, and then the population growth portion. So just a thought to throw out for the group. Thank you.
Yes, that's a thought, but if you look on the revenue side, they've paid us about $500,000. That'd be another $500,000 we have to come up with somewhere. We're already in the hole, I believe, on the, the jail budget, so.
That'd also be, if we're gonna have to expand the jail, then we're gonna have to expand to accommodate for Madison County as well. So that would be money we wouldn't have to spend on expansion and construction cost. So I don't want to be in the jail business for other counties personally.
Other questions? Justice Yanis?
Thank you. So I do have a question. We're mentioning population growth, right? So out of these intakes, how many were new community members?
How many was what?
New community members that did not live here? Do we have that data?
I'll have to get that information for you
Okay.
to see who's locals and who's out
Yeah,
of
and-
state.
And previous convictions too. That would be good to see.
When we run our last statistics, most of the pretrial have been there at least 7 times. So this, the next time, they made 8, so this is a general rule, our information we had.
Okay. I'd be just curious to see which
Okay,
ones
so
are
you want to know
new
where they
committee
come from.
members, yeah. I mean, just mathematically, if we're stating population growth, then we need to see that number of who really is new to the community.
Okay.
Justice Bond?
Randall, because Madison County keeps being brought up, there's another number that I'd like for you to get for me sometime if you could, or make it part of the numbers that you bring up. And I have not said anything about this yet, but because I don't want to pick on Madison County, our neighbors to the east. But besides the Madison County people that they bring over here and that we're reimbursed for, I'm starting to become curious as to how many Madison County residents that we've arrested over here that we're keeping in our jail that we don't get reimbursed for because.
Because they're arrested in Washington County?
Yes, sir. I'd like to see where that number is, if we could start getting that, if it's possible. And reason being, let's say we start receiving any of their detainees.
Okay.
We're gonna see that number go up, and that's ones that we won't get reimbursed for. If they start turning more people loose, we don't have any kind of border security between ourselves and Madison County.
No, we,
Okay. Sorry, but, you know,
okay, we'll get that number too.
Any other comments?
thank you.
Okay.
Justice Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And believe it or not, we're not trying to pick on Madison County, but I would like to know how many of theirs that we're currently holding our pretrial, and do they pay us
Yes, they send a check every month. Yeah, they pay, no issue, $62 a day.
pretrial people?
Per person, yes.
They're sending
Yeah,
the,
we hold just, yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Bowman, Justice Bowman.
Thank you, sir. I noticed that there is a substantial increase in federal prisoners this year compared to last. It looks like probably 2,500 additional federals. What's going on there?
Well, when they have their court and they convene and whatever falls out, what they bring to us. So, I mean, we don't say we need a certain number or whatever. Just, one time it's been probably a couple of years ago, we was down to 35 or 38, something like that. And this year, they've had numbers went up. They had a roundup last couple of weeks of different people, and our number has influxed a little bit there.
Are they paying the full rate of our cost?
Yes, they've always paid the full rate and of the cost, plus they take care of medical. And then some other things that the U.S. Marshal does, most people are not familiar with if you're not in the business, is down through the year, especially when the war was over, we got trailer truck loads of food that they brought in that we fed to prisoners. We got trailer truck loads of mattresses. They brought 750 mattresses down at $40 a piece. They brought razors, rubber boots, and the stuff that they had left over that they couldn't use brought straight to us because we helped the Marshal Service. And then also one year they had a grant or something, it was no money matching. They come down and bought us a van and a pickup. We started helping them transport, and they come up with that. So there's more benefits to the Marshals than you see just because you're holding them.
Okay. Is it just primarily because they're full, their facilities are full?
Yes, there's just so many that hold U.S. Marshals in the Western District.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you, sir.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda is Mr. Nick Robbins. He is the Executive Director of an organization called Returning Home in Springdale. I visited with him 5 or 6 weeks ago after he pestered me for several weeks to come talk to him. And I was impressed to the point where I said he ought to come talk to us. I've given him 15 minutes to make his presentation, and then we're going to spend 15 minutes in a Q&A between the Quorum Court members and Mr. Robbins if we got questions. So Nick, go ahead, introduce yourself and talk to us.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. This is something that is very passionate about. So being able to share my passion in the work that we're doing in this county is exciting. So I thank you for that. My name is Nick Robbins. I'm the Executive Director of Returning Home, and kind of to discuss how Returning Home got started, we would first have to understand that I've been in this field for 12 years, working in corrections and in the area of reentry. I've had opportunity to be on national boards. I've had opportunity on a regular basis throughout the year to travel around, learn best practices from other states, which is a lot of fun, taking credit for other people's work, bringing it here, and doing really awesome at it. The first thing we got to know is there is a myth in corrections, and the myth is release leads to happiness. Because the individuals that are incarcerated, once they're incarcerated because we're uncomfortable with their decision making, they only think of one thing the entire time they're incarcerated. I just want to get out. And everything's going to be okay when I get out. But things were not okay prior to incarceration. Jail is not the problem. Prison is not the problem. The individual has a problem. And so we started returning home to work with men and women coming out of incarceration in our county because no one was addressing the problem. We fund the response. We don't fund investing in the individuals. The officers would show up after a crime is committed. The jail will house them after the officers drop them off. But at no point does our county support anything that is breaking the cycle of incarceration. As the officer said here, he said on average the people they're working with have been released 7 times. All the stats that we've done, we've had the University of Arkansas pull studies for us on multiple occasions over the years. On average, they've been in jail 4 times, and on average, they've been in prison at least twice. So again, incarceration is not the issue. So what we got to do is we got to figure out, well, what's the problem? These individuals, we have an expectation for them to meet that they are not equipped to meet. If I was expected to be a father because I had children, but I'd never seen what a father was like, and I was never trained, and I never had experience, I would not be a good father. So your expectations for me as a father wouldn't be realistic. These individuals were expecting them to be free and to be able to follow the rules and do well in society. It's not realistic because these individuals currently are not capable of doing that because the high levels of mental illness, the high levels of addictions, the high levels of trauma through abuse, all these things have never been addressed at any point in their lives. So what Returning Home did is we opened up the Returning Home Center. It's in 703 North Thompson in Springdale, across from Neil's Cafe. It's a 15,000 square foot building. In the facility, we house a number of nonprofits and for-profits that all work with the same clientele. Everybody that walks through the door, we'd like to call ourselves a one-stop shop. Multiple agencies all working with these individuals once they get out, if they're getting out of jail, or if they're getting out of prison, or if they've been in prison for 10 years, but their past is still hindering the future they desire, we'll come alongside them in their life right where they're at. We have a clothing closet, we have a food pantry, we give them hygiene, we have mental health services on site. We provide 31 classes a week to our county. Some of them are drug court classes. Some of them are pilot projects that we work with parole. Anybody that paroles out that's immediate to high risk to reoffend based on their RORA score, they go through our reentry workshop for 2 Tuesdays in a row, where we're teaching things like healthy relationships. We're teaching them about how to get a job and keep a job. We're teaching them about how to understand, identify their mental illness and substance abuses, and what in the community is willing to come alongside you in those processes. We deal with them on financial management. We talk about now that you're out and you're getting a paycheck, what's that look like to manage that so you can succeed with what you thought about the entire time you're incarceration. You had a hope, you had a belief, I'm gonna do this, and then you got thrust out in the same environment you came from, and nothing had changed in you and nothing had changed in your environment. So we're coming alongside them, providing these classes and providing these services. We have case management. We also have a residential facility for men paroling out of prison into our building. We have 50 men living there today. These men are high-risk individuals. That's why we're working with them. If it's easy, we don't want them. So we love the opportunity to come alongside them. They have curfews. They have ankle monitors. They are drug tested every single week. They have to keep full-time employment. They have to attend 12 hours of classes. They have to meet with a case manager. They have to go through mental health diagnosis. We do a lot. Once they're getting ready to leave after 90 days, we look to help them find housing. We look to connect them to the services that they found value in while they were in our facility, what it looks like of connecting outside of our facility for them services as well. So what our proposal would be to this county would be to do more of what we do really well. We are very skilled, we're educated, and all of our experience is in this. We would like, there's 2 different options here, and as you can see in the paper, one option would be, if we're talking about building some beds, let's build a returning home center next to the jail. Let us work with all 200 individuals being released from jail every single day. If there's bed overcrowding, put them in our beds at the returning home center at the jail, and we will get them jobs. We'll provide transportation. We will do mental health services for them. We will, everything that's listed here, each client would have case management, soft skills, life skills training, participate in 1 hour of mental health a week, substance abuse counseling, attend 2 hours of substance abuse support groups, and they work 1 hour with their caseworker. Currently, our guys, 100% of them are employed. 100% of them are paying their rent. We're not doing this for free. Nothing's for free. They have to pay, and these individuals as well would pay rent, which is a blessing that they're working, they're paying taxes, and they're paying rent. We would do this for pre-trial individuals, so individuals that are not currently on a probation or parole, they'd be waiting to see the judge since they're yet guilty. Why not put them in a facility that has a step down in their supervision? They would have to live on site, but they'd also have the opportunity to work. They'd have the opportunity to start paying child support. They'd have the opportunity to get their mental illness and substance abuses situations dealt with. And the other thing that's pretty amazing with the returning home center is when we opened it, it was me, sitting in a 15,000 square foot building. I live in Branson, Missouri. I drive 4 hours a day to get to work, to and from. And it was me. But when the buildings came open, people started moving in. They said, hey, I've got this organization. We do this in the community. We want to do it for your clients. And right now, we do not have a single office open anymore because we have 10 different organizations that provide services weekly. And if you built this at the jail, it would be my job to fill it with for-profits, nonprofits, volunteers, anybody willing to provide services for these men and women. We are fully aware of these individuals that they struggle with a lot of unique things. They have passive violence that does not shy us away. The individuals that I currently house, you wouldn't even let me work with those individuals if they're in county jail because they're too high a level. So the individual, it would actually be a little easier. So if you can make my job easier, I'd appreciate that. We would only charge you $43 per person per day. And these individuals, so a lot less than if they're in the regular jail. These individuals would also pay $15 a day in rent, so it'd drop you to about $28 a day is what it would cost. So you would get all of those services for these individuals for about half the rate right now. And the thing that's exciting is we could say, yeah, this makes sense financially. If we're going to build something, why don't we also partner with some nonprofits, bring some experience in the restorative justice side, bring some experience in the mental health side, all those things. But what's exciting is when that individual, when you start to see your rate of release, instead of, hey, this person's been here 7 times, what if in 6 months, on average, they've only been here 6 times? And then a year later, they've only been here 5 times. And you see it through life change. Because the stats of somebody that has a parent incarcerated, right now in the United States, 10 million children have had a parent incarcerated at some point in their life. Those children are so much more likely to be incarcerated. It's devastating. They don't even have a chance. But just imagine if we work with their mothers and their fathers and we change their lives. And so now they're not a burden on their family. Now they're leading their family in stopping the cycle of incarceration in their home for generations upon generations. And I've seen that over the last 12 years, time and time again. We would love for the opportunity to partner with the county, partner with the sheriff, to sit down and decide what this looks like to best serve our community alongside each other. We also have the option at the bottom option is off-site. So also one of my providers does housing. So they're currently doing that for the men in our facility in Springdale. So if you're going, we don't want to cover the construction costs, it'll cost you a little more. It's about $57 a day, but we would fund the construction costs of a facility that would house 50 people. Now, if you were doing it on-site, because right now how it's written up is 25 men, 25 women. But if you were doing the construction and the county was covering that cost, we have no problem with doubling that number. If you need to do 50 men, 50 women, if freeing up 100 beds would be impactful, we'd be willing to do that. We have the capability of doing that, and we have the experience of doing that. Thank you so much for your time. You have any questions?
Questions? Justice Harbison?
So your first suggestion is that you would work out of the current jail. Is that what I understand?
No, they would build a returning home center next to the jail. It's actually something that's pretty common nowadays, that they're starting building facilities for nonprofits to work out of, providing services in lower risk housing.
What about renting or leasing a building? There is a large building in South Fayetteville that is available. The old IGA building, where you wouldn't have the cost of, well, you would have cost in renovating the building and that kind of thing. But do you, as a nonprofit, would you renovate that building and take pretrial people that really have not been convicted of anything?
That's would be the off-site version would be that. Yeah, we would just find a
Offsite-
building that's
but-
already
But you
existing.
still want the county to kick in $53 a day?
For the off-site, 57, yes. We couldn't fund it
57.
ourselves because we don't get money for anything. I spend like a month to get somebody to donate like $25, so my fundraising, it's rough.
I'm real interested in this program, but I'm not interested in paying $57 a day.
Well, if you're
I know
right now,
where
you're already paying for
I
it.
know where you're coming from, that it would reduce the cost, but
It would.
we need, this may be a piece of that puzzle that we've been talking about to reduce incarceration. And I'm definitely interested. Thank you.
Yeah, and so for that second option, the $57 a day, that's because we would pay for the construction. So it's, if you guys did the construction, you paid for it, you would be housing people technically in county jail with a ton of services for $28 a day. Dedicated staff, at that total, it'd be 12 staff members working with them daily. So basically what I'm saying is if you're going to house them, why don't we do it more cost effective, and why don't we provide the services that will change their lives?
Right, thank you.
Justice Ecke?
Yes, thank you for your presentation. I have a question. Have you set up any kind of meetings with our county judge and the sheriff to discuss any of this?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
Judge Wood has been to our facility and toured it, and then Sheriff and I have met, and we've discussed this specific proposal.
The reason I'm going down that line is I don't like micromanaging our elected officials.
Right, absolutely.
And if you could meet with them, they know what they need better than what we know.
Yeah.
We
I
know
agree.
about the funding, I mean, they know better. And I don't want to micromanage what they were elected by the citizens to do. So good to know that you have done that. Thank you.
Justice Madison?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back here today. In the beginning, you mentioned the problems that are associated with incarceration are mental illness, addiction, and having been abused, trauma. I also think there may be another category of people with just a low IQ.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, based on these kinds of innate issues that people have had, do you all in any way help them to get on disability?
Yes, we do.
Oh, I have some people I need to bring to you.
It is very difficult, not saying we're extremely
Oh, I know,
successful,
I
but we
know.
do go through the process for anybody that's housed with us. You're either on disability, working towards disability, so if they aren't currently on it, they need to get a doctor's note saying, hey, I can't work, and then we pursue that with them, go through that.
I've always told people that are thinking about applying, don't give up.
Yeah.
Everybody gets turned down 3 times. And the entire time I've known of people applying for disability, I know of one person that was approved on the first time. He got approved March 1st and died at the end of March. His condition was that serious.
Yeah.
And I had to call Blanche Lincoln's office to get him recommended.
Yeah.
But are you only treating people in a residential setting, or do you have any sort of
we've-
outpatient?
Yeah, so we right now, currently monthly, we bring in 20 new residential clients, and we bring in 30 what we call front door clients. They walk in, just provide services to the front portion. So our organizations do work with anybody that walks in the door. The housing is just currently just for the men that are coming from prison, and it's because the state is supplementing a lot of that costs, offsetting it.
Well, so often, I think what happens with people with these issues that we've listed is that they don't have any money. You know, I have some people who do work for me occasionally, and I must have 10 cell phone numbers for one of them because he loses a phone, it breaks, he's borrowed one from a friend, or, you know, it's hard to get in touch with them sometimes. I'm not sure people still have alarm clocks because sometimes they don't wake up when the rest of us are waking up. And something like appearing for a court date is a hard thing to keep track of. And so we have people in jail on failures to appear, failure to pay fines, who are really not likely to hurt any of us.
Right, correct. Yeah, and
So
that's, yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that's exciting about this is we provide transportation, we provide case management, so we make sure they get where they're supposed to go. Our current guys, we're taking them to their doctor's appointments, and we're getting new teeth and new glasses.
Okay, I qualify
and
to work for you, I
all that.
think.
There you go. Absolutely. So, yeah, all those things are extremely important, and oh, I didn't mention this, but I probably should. This would be voluntary. We're not having anybody forced into this situation. If I've got 50, 100 beds, I want the people in jail that are saying, I can't bond out, but I need the opportunity that you're willing to give me because I need to get my life on track. Our current facility for our men, it's voluntary. So they are in prison getting released with no special conditions and are saying, I need what you're offering me. Instead of going to mom's house, I need somebody making me drug test every week. I need somebody to hold me accountable. You know, those things are important to some of these people because we think that they just want to like run away and not have any problems. Many of them, majority of them are saying, I need the help you're offering. If it means I have to stay off drugs and I have to do all this stuff, so I'm willing to do that too because I need that help. Even simple things as they don't have identification. They're not getting released with IDs. They don't have birth certificates. You're just starting over as a human being when you walk out.
And it can be very expensive to get birth certificates.
Yes.
I've done that for
Well, yeah,
people.
we have to pay for IDs and birth certificates and driver's license every single week.
Yeah, I think I need to come work for you. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Justice Harbison.
The comment I made about the $57, I want to clarify that because we've got close to 400 pretrial people in jail. And I've been following in the newspaper what their bail is. And the bail hasn't been more than $2,500, which is 10%, so their bail and their part of it would be $250. So we've got a lot of poor people in jail that either can't pay the bail or their families don't want to pay the bail because they have substance abuse problems and failure to appear. So what I'm really looking for is some organization that these people, if they could be put under a house arrest with ankle monitors or something like this, and that you could help these people. And I understand where you're coming from, and none of this is free. But I would hope that if we really got this out in the community, that the community would support this. And I really think it is a piece to the puzzle that we've been talking about. Thank you.
Yeah.
Justice Yanis.
First, thank you for your passion.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
absolutely.
And then second, I'm going to do a plug for your fundraising, so
Yes.
go donate. There you go.
Absolutely.
So, a couple questions. How long have you been open?
Since 2017, we opened the center.
Okay. And what has been your re-incarceration rate?
We are not allowed to track those because
Okay.
we don't have access to EOMIS, which is a system that does that.
Okay. And
So
then,
we track completion rate, so people that come to us for 1 minute that actually complete it, and so we're at 60%. And so for the individuals that we work with that are high risk, so for individuals getting out of incarceration, 53% reincarcerate. And because that's low risk, medium risk, high risk, and because of the risk level we work with, I expect it to be in the 70s for reincarceration. And so we're completing 60% of our folks, so we're pretty excited about that.
And then for what you're wanting to do on the side of the jail, is that going to be prior to the release or after
So
the
that'd be
release?
pre-trial, would be the residential component. The front component, like how we have it returning them now, would be for anybody that they got out that day and they needed some clothes and a job and some food. Or if they had been released 10 years ago and they just need help, they can swing by and we can do that. So absolutely, at any point.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Justice Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everybody in your facility then is there by their choice.
Correct. So you apply to come. It's quite a bit of a process to get approved because there's not a lot of beds in the state. But once they get there, then it becomes mandatory. And that's how this would work too. So you don't just decide tomorrow, you know what, I'm good, I'm just going to go to mom's. No, you got to stay for the duration.
So what percentage of your clients have ankle bracelets?
For the residential, all of them,
Yes.
and that is per Arkansas Community Corrections and their billing monitors. So it's not for tracking purposes, it's for billing purposes.
I see. I'm not sure I understand the differences there.
Certain monitors just tell you however many monitors is on is how much they'll pay for that day.
Okay.
And if they're not on, then they're not paying for that.
So
person.
what percentage of your clients come in and stay for the duration?
60%.
60%. And so how soon do a lot of them drop out? Is it 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month and they're gone? Or?
It's usually a first week or two and then the last week or two. Self-sabotaging is real. We have a lot of folks within the last few days start using because of fear of what's it going to look like when I walk out of here. So that is a huge issue for us. And because they said they need us to be successful, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to create individuals that's institutionalized success. So they're only going to be successful while they're here. But for some individuals, because of incarceration is such a big part of their life, that's what they're expecting, and they usually
And so
get in trouble.
fear drives them back into the use just before they're released.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And we work with our mental health therapists on site. We're all very aware. Our case managers are all very aware of it and talk to them. We actually do a staffing every Thursday. So all the different organizations have somebody sitting in the room when we're doing staffing and we're talking about the individuals. How's so-and-so doing? They're getting ready to leave, or hey, this guy just got here. What's the basically plan for making this person as successful as possible now that they're out? So, and that is always brought up, but it is a tough one.
Do y'all have any follow-up situations, kind of like AA, where they have friends that they get in touch with, kind of come alongside to help
Yeah.
pass the?
So a lot of the classes that are done on site are done for people in the community. So they come in. So we've got 7 days a week. We've got, or not 7 days a week, 7 different times a week. We've got substance abuse classes. So AA, NA, Substance Recovery, Reformers Unanimous, and so that's done by individuals in the community. So when they're getting out, they try to plug them into the group that already go in the community, and then we look to is have them be a part of the community. If we find out one of the local churches is doing a men's event, we get everybody in the van and we head over there because we're their community. Last one, they bought all our guys Chick-fil-A, so they show up early, and their guys in the community came and spent time with our folks, and we go on kayaking trips, and we just we just want them to be a part of the community because we want them to build relationships outside of us, because that's where the success is going to continue, is beyond us.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Justice Ecke?
Just one quick question. You have a work release where you said a van. Do you take your workers to work, drop them off, and then pick them up after work?
No.
Oh, so that's not your organization? Okay, because there's
Oh,
an
no,
organization.
that's the prison. That's the prison that's in town, in Springdale,
Okay,
called the work release.
I'm not sure, but I know that.
Yeah, so it's a
where I
minimum
work,
security
there's
prison.
several young men that go in and the van picks them up, but it's unmarked, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Okay,
that's
thank you.
the
That's all I
state
just wanted
prison.
to know. Thank you.
Yeah, so for our current facility, we don't do transport to and from work. We're actually in partnership with Pedal It Forward, so they provide bikes. We encourage guys to get jobs within 1.5 miles of our location. We're centrally located that, man, if you want a job, you could have 3 of them within the week. It doesn't take any more than 2 weeks, because we've been around. We have employers like stick their head in the hallway and yell, "I need 2 more guys." So like, it's not an issue. Employment's not an issue for us. But for this, we would be providing transportation. That's in the cost, because if it's on the jail property, we want to make sure we're watching as they come and go, because it would be a little higher level of security than there would be in our facility. And that, would determine the sheriff and how much they come around and hang out and make sure everybody's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And we're blessed to have a good relationship with the Springdale Police Department. They're so good. Whenever we're concerned about if there's drugs in our facility, we'll tell them, hey, would you be willing to bring a dog in here and straighten some guys out? And so far, they've done that numerous times and nothing has been found. So that's very encouraging. And the police department has been very kind to us.
Other questions? Justice Duncan?
What would you need to track the recidivism rate, or I guess the reincarceration rate, if I'm using that term correctly?
Yeah, so we need to have access to EOMIS. It's a system that tracks all of that stuff. So where you can pull reports on individuals that has their movement in time, where they are at the exact moment. But only government, people working for the state have access to that. We've asked. We actually asked last week. We asked quite a bit to get access to that.
So if this is something we actually looked at moving forward with, it would make sense to probably pull that data, right, for the county, and to understand if we're going to invest in something, we want to know that there's an ROI on the investment. So I don't know. Sheriff, I don't know who we asked for that, but that's the request.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the opportunity to visit the graduation of the drug court recently, and I was thoroughly impressed with some of the attitudes of the graduates, and I was amazed to hear that some of them have been there involved as long as 2.5 years before they graduate. I'm wondering, your program is very limited on time.
Yes.
What, 90 days?
For the current one we're doing, yes, 90 days.
Okay. Well, I know I asked the judge about doubling that, what it would take in people, and she told me 2 additional people.
Right.
And I guess the main thing there is that the judges, the people making the decisions about these prisoners have to recommend them for the drug treatment program. But you don't have anybody making references or suggesting people come in. How do the prisoners know about your service?
So they've got a list in each facility that says the approved facilities, and the grapevine in a prison system is pretty powerful. A year before we were open, they were sending us applications to come. And we have family members that reach out to us, just look online and kind of hear about us. So we have a good reputation where I think right now we're averaging 12 applications a day, and we're able to bring in 20 people, new people a month.
Wow. Sounds like a very impressive program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much, sir. We'll be back to you. We're going to take a 10-minute recess before we continue. All right, we have 3 ordinances on the agenda that all have to do with the jail expansion, and if I'll try to get them in the right order. Item 6 is the ordinance to pass the 0.25% tax for operation and maintenance. Item 7 is the ordinance allows us to hold the special election. And then item 8 is the ordinance for the 0.5% sales tax for the jail expansion. The sponsor of this ordinance, all 3 ordinances no longer on the court, and we can consider them one by one, or we can consider them all 3 at a time, whatever your pleasure is. So the floor is open for a motion. Justice Harbison.
Could we have our attorney kind of explain exactly what the three are and how they are connected or not connected?
Mr. Lesser?
I will try. Let's see. They're all connected because they deal with the jail expansion. One of them is a 25% or a fourth of a cent increase in maintenance and operations that could pass without the other two passing, which would increase the tax on the current system to add another quarter of a cent. In order to do that, you would also have to pass the one that calls for the special election to have this, because this is a new sales tax in addition to what we currently have for the jail for the maintenance and operation. So if Ordinance 7 to call the election and Ordinance 6 were both passed, that can be done without, that has nothing really to do with the it has to do with the jail expansion, because that's the maintenance and operations that would fund the jail expansion. But if it was passed and the other part was not passed, it could go into effect to add to the maintenance and operation of the current jail. Item 8 is the special election for the half-cent sales tax, which would actually fund the bonds that would actually be used to build the jail, to construct a jail expansion. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I was under the impression on the half cent, once the bonds were paid off, that we maintained a fourth of that cent to run the jail. And we've got these separated out. I don't,
So once the bonds were paid off, the half-cent sales tax, number 8, once the bonds were paid off or the money was raised to pay for the jail expansion, that one would go away. And the quarter-cent sales tax, if passed, would continue. You could in theory pass the half-cent sales tax and not the quarter-cent sales tax, which means you would have a big deficit in operating the jail and the maintenance and operation costs. So you really need that quarter-cent for the maintenance and operations. But the item 8 on the agenda tonight, the special election for the half-cent, is what would actually fund the bonds until the money was raised, and then it would end.
in the last election in the building of the current jail, I thought this was all together, and we had a half cent. Once the jail was built and the bonds were paid off for the expansion, then a fourth of a cent was kept for running the jail or maintenance and upkeep of the jail. I don't understand why we have these separated.
They're separate. I can't speak to that because when was that? Back in
December.
2000? Was that, you mean when we built the jail initially, the new jail?
Well, yes, because it was one issue.
About 20 years ago.
It was one issue because it was a half, and then a fourth of that sunset, and we kept a fourth of it to run the jail. And now we've got it as two ballot issues.
Right, and this was the way that bond counsel presented it. And the bond counsel that presented this does the majority of bond work for counties and cities across the state. And so my only explanation that he had was, you have the half cent that goes away, and the quarter cent that's continuing. Once it's in place, it continues. There's no sunset clause on it, because it is to fund the maintenance and operations. But the half cent does have a sunset clause once the money is raised. Yeah.
And the motion we need is either to pass them on to the quorum court for their consideration or to not pass them on to the quorum court for their consideration. Justice Duncan.
I move that we do not pass these on, so would move that we table indefinitely,
Postpone indefinitely.
postpone indefinitely, rather.
Is there a second?
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to postpone these ordinances indefinitely. Discussion.
I'm sorry.
Justice
Honestly
Jack-
feel we don't have enough information to pass it on to the full quorum court. There still has to be a study made in order for us to have adequate information to make an informed vote on this.
Thank you. Other comments? Justice.
Thank you,
Lemon.
sir. We all know that we have to put money with the jail every year to pay the maintenance and pay the upkeep and pay the law officers. And we don't need to do away with all this. If we're not gonna build a jail, that's okay, but we're gonna have to keep paying for the jail operation and maintenance and stuff you have now. So I don't think we need to kill all this. I think we need to look at it, and you're right, we do need to study a little more on building a jail, but there's stuff here we need to get past sooner. Thank you.
One of the options, if all of these were postponed indefinitely, would be to author a new ordinance when this committee determined what was appropriate. That's one of the options. Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to state my strongly held objection to special elections. This is a big issue for Washington County. It's a lot of money. It's a big investment. It affects a lot of people. And I think if we're going to ask the voters to vote on something this big, we need to have it not as a special election, but at a general election, a school election, something that will have a good, substantial turnout. Thank you.
Other comments? Justice Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. I was unable to attend the county services meeting, but I did listen online, and I am in strong agreement with a proposal J.P. Harbison brought up about looking for outside sources to come in and assess our criminal justice system as a whole to see what needs fixed and how we can go from there. And I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate you giving me the time to speak, but I just wanted to say I do agree with Ann Harbison's idea.
It's on the agenda, and we'll discuss it in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Other comments?
Mr. Lester, you mentioned if one's passed, it leaves a deficit. Can you explain that?
So the way what happened, for example, about 20 years ago when they passed the bonds to build the current jail, which was new then, because our old jail right here on College is what we had. You have the bonds that are paid, and they pay for the overall construction cost of the project. Then what you have is you have a sales tax that is put forth that pays for that is earmarked and goes straight to the maintenance and operations of the jail. And so with these right here, that's the same thing. This is, one of these is to raise the money to pay for the construction cost. And the other, because you're going to have additional staff, you're going to have additional needs, there is another ordinance that would then put forth another sales tax that would go into place that would be earmarked for maintenance and operations. And so if you were to pass the bonds and have build and construct the jail, but you didn't have the maintenance and operations cost, then the county would be operating at a deficit, because that's what that money is earmarked for, to pay for those operations and maintenance on the building in perpetuity, so forever. And so this quarter-cent increase is to pay for is to offset those, or pay for the costs that would be associated with a new jail. There's currently a quarter-cent sales tax in Washington County that goes directly for maintenance and operation of the jail, and that's where the majority of the jail funding comes from. And so this here would be doing the same for the new section of the jail as well.
Other comments? Other questions? Justice Bowman.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've been talking about this thing a long time, and I've talked to a lot of people in our audience about this situation. I'm sorry?
Talk into the mic,
Oh,
sir.
I thought it was. I've thought about this thing a lot, and we've been talking about it a long time. And I've talked to a lot of people in the audience that have references to changing things like doing the study and so forth. I think the thing that scares me most about this thing, if we continue to postpone a vote on this situation, it's going to get worse and worse at the jail. The sheriff tells us he's releasing 2 low-threat people from the jail on a monthly basis, 200 a month. Even if we went ahead and looked at funding a returning home center that had been proposed to us, if we double the size of our drug court, if we also see a reduction because of the drug lab being up here and minimizing time before trial, we still are going to be faced with population problems at the jail. And I think, you know, I'm all in favor of study. But I think to be realistic, we're going to have to go ahead and try to get this thing on the ballot next year at least. And be sure that we bring this thing to people. If we go ahead and set up a study, there should be plenty of time for a study to be completed and come back with their recommendations that we can either approve or disapprove. Modifications we might make. You know, the bond is supposed to be for $38 million. We're not forced to use $38 million if we don't decide we don't need $38 million. That was a proposal for the bond size. So I hope that we'll go ahead and look at this thing from multiple directions and consider the studies. Consider the impact of the drug lab. Consider doubling drug courts. Consider helping returning home center. I think they're all positive programs. But we must be realistic. The population growth is going to continue to put pressure on our system. And we're going to have to do something about it. And for us to go ahead and think we're going to, you know, be nice guys and we're going to study and we're going to turn all these people loose as breaking the law, I think it's naive of us. And I don't want to be accused of being naive. We're dealing with a real problem. And I think we've got to deal with it with a real solution. So I'm not on the committee, but I sure hope you'll consider those thoughts.
Other discussion? Justice Yanis.
Thank you, J.P. Bowman. I just want to mention that a system that is under pressure and we're not checking every angle will break. So if we do not do a study and analyze every angle that we can't see, we can't do that ourselves. We're too biased. So we have to do a study in order to figure out what's our next step, because otherwise we're just working on what we believe and we're not the experts. So there has to be a way to do the study and proceed. This just has been handed to us. And I mean, it just has been handed to us and we're not experts. None of us on this court are experts. So we need help. And we have a lot of questions. And we need those answered by the experts.
Yes, sir.
You know, I hope you understand. I propose that you do go ahead and consider looking at all these proposals, doing the studies. I'm not eliminating the study. I say we absolutely need to look at all the possibilities to go forward without being naive about the situation. So please don't interpret my comments as saying I'm not in favor of the studies. Thank you.
Justice Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair. I believe it would be naive of us not to take every step possible. And I think what the majority of us who are brand new on the court are feeling is that we're feeling pressure, saying, come on, we've got to make this decision. But I know every single one of us is interested in knowing every single angle in order to make an informed decision. And I think that's why it is so important that we take our time to make sure that we're doing it right. I understand that there's a whole lot of pressure on you, Sheriff Helder, and the jail's population. I don't know what to do in the interim. I wish we could figure that part out, that piece out, to where we could get these studies done and at the same time help out in some way. Maybe that's something someone has an idea about out in the crowd, because you guys have great ideas out there. Appreciate you guys. I do feel that it would be very important to get together the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee that has been suggested. It was told that, or we were told a few meetings back that it already existed, but I would love to know who is on that committee. Who exactly is on the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee? Does anyone know?
You're going to have to ask the judge that question.
Is the judge here? Do you know who all is on the committee? Okay, thank you, Judge. All right, that's all I had to say.
Other questions? Other comments?
I just want to make we talk about hiring professionals. As far as I'm concerned, our sheriff is a professional, and all of his staff is professionals. It's like our road department. Do we have to have an engineering study on every bridge, everything we do, and every car we buy? They're professional people. Our road department's professionals. Everybody we got's professionals. So, I mean, the people that comes in is going to do this study is going to go to them and beg for every bit of their information they have, because that's the only way they're going to get the information. So, I mean, a study's good, but a study could cost $150,000. It could be 2 years out to do something else, and we've already got a big problem now that we've had already, and now we're going to push it down the road 2 more years. Somewhere or another, we're going to break. Somewhere or another, the sheriff's going to get strangled by the federal government, and then he's going to say, okay, I can only take 500, 600, 700 people, and everybody else out here is just going to get to roam and do what they want. Somewhere or another, we're going to have to stop playing this game. We're going to have to get together. We're going to have to get it done. It's the only way we can do it. Thank you.
Other comments? Justice Yanis.
I just want to say, with the study, it gives us an unbiased look at what's going on within our system. Professionally, we cannot conduct our own study and say, this is what's wrong, because it's not solving any purpose. So it has to be unbiased, is the first thing.
If you want to study, make an ordinance, let's get it on the road.
It's on the agenda.
Let's do it.
Sit tight, sit tight, sit tight. It's on the agenda. Are we ready for the question?
No, you got to have can you clarify the
Okay.
motion?
Public comment. Okay. We will take public comment. You'll get 3 minutes. There'll be 12 minutes total. Please give us your name and address, and please keep the comments germane to the motion on the floor. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, JP's, don't worry, this is just, my printer didn't work, and I had Sheriff Helder's open letter and his Q&A sheet with me for reference. My name is Frank Johnson. I'm a resident of Fayetteville. What else did you, my address? I'm trying to think through what I was supposed to go through, so.
That was good.
Okay. I'm here to show my support for Sheriff Helder's proposal, all 3 initiatives, if you will. And I'm hoping to give you a different perspective that adds value to the decision you have to make. Just for the sake of full disclosure and transparency, Sheriff Helder, Tim, and I worked together as police officers years and years ago at the Fayetteville Police Department. I love him like a brother, and I just wanted you to know that. So no one accuses either he or me for political posturing. This is just my perspective. And I'm also the chair of the Ozark Guidance Foundation, and we work with Judge Wood. Thank you very much to him and to all you for your support of the CSU. So what I have to say is already captured in what the sheriff communicated to the public. And I can tell you, having worked with him and Major Hoyt, who I'll include in this conversation, because I reported to both of them at the Fayetteville Police Department, and they are tremendously thorough. They are very apolitical. They both, in reporting to them, was, I still think about Sheriff Major Hoyt going through everything I did, okay? They're very thorough, very comprehensive in what they do. So the documents they prepared were no surprise to me. What I didn't understand, holistically speaking, as a voter, and I was somewhat embarrassed by this, is the magnitude of what they were dealing with in terms of our legal liabilities, our risks there, in terms of any safety issues that are related to the jail overcrowding situation. And as I looked at it holistically, I realized that I wasn't as informed as a voter as I really should have been. So my point in bringing that out is to tell you that those two documents are really, really good documents to provide to your point, to make those well-informed decisions. You know, I get it that, you know, having a consultant or a third party come in and take a look at everything, but I can tell you that Sheriff Helder and his command staff are very thorough. And as a former police officer and former police chief, I understand the situation he's in. And my understanding of the situation that he's in, having been in law enforcement by myself,
Very, very quickly, sir, your time's up.
this is about crisis management, 24/7 for Sheriff Helder. It's about crisis management.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good evening. Beth Koger, 3661 Embry Drive, Fayetteville. As you know, I've been here several times since January, and I've sent you a few emails, a few letters, information. And tonight I want to say that first, J.P. Jenkins brought up the prospect about what we could do now and what alternatives. I assume that everyone got the letter last week from former Judge John Comstock. That had the best outline, the best explanation of what we could do now that I've seen, better than anything that I've put forth for you. So those are things we can do right now to get the people off the floor. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is when we talk about the study, it needs to be totally independent, and I agree that Sheriff Helder is a very competent law enforcement officer. He's a great sheriff, but he doesn't know about the other departments that need to be studied. The study needs to cover all departments of the county, the judiciary, the law enforcement, probation, not just the jail, because you can't fix that problem if you just go with what's at the jail. And when we have that, I've given you information from JFA and Associates, and they're criminal justice reform experts, and everyone has that proposal, I assume. I'll have another proposal to give you Wednesday. This will be from Justice Management Institute out of Virginia. They're also criminal justice reform experts. That's what they do. They go all over the country, conduct these studies, and make recommendations. Because if we don't study this issue now, if we go ahead and vote to build the jail, then this is all for nothing, because it won't come up again until we need a bigger jail. And when you're studying to hire that committee, I would respectfully ask that you, if you can have citizens to help you look at that, I would respectfully say that I would like to be on that committee, and so would Sarah Moore. The other thing, let's see. Oh, I want to talk about the cost. You talk about the 1/4% sales tax to pay for the operation of the jail and the maintenance and operation of the jail. But in Pulaski County, they have a 12,100 bed jail. Their budget for the jail is almost $33 million a year. And that's in Pulaski County. We're going to have a larger jail than that if we go through with this proposal as it is. We don't even know how much that will cost, because I've asked if there was a cost analysis, and I was told there was not.
There is one.
There is one?
There is not.
There is not, correct. Okay. So I think that's something we need to know too. Believe it or not, I think that's it.
Thank you.
And I was within my 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
13 seconds.
Next speaker.
My name is Melody Tominski. I reside at 1554 East Century Drive in Fayetteville. I come at this from a couple of different perspectives. This is my first meeting actually here to listen to this, and I appreciate the thoughtful comments that are coming from all of you. From 2010 to 2014, I had the opportunity to lead a statewide organization in social service, but we had 2 Federal Bureau of Prison community reentry programs, and we also provided residential treatment to people coming out of the drug court. And there are some very innovative things going on, and I want to speak on behalf of Returning Home. I think you've got an idea there that
has a lot of merit when you can approach people from a holistic perspective. And the reason I encourage you to strongly consider that is because you're sitting here talking about building a larger jail and what goes with that. Some of the things I appreciate the fact, and I want to support you all or recommend that you all do consider looking at a study on a holistic basis so that you can take a look not only at the fresh ideas. One of the things I get concerned about is if you do build a very large jail, all of a sudden you will be in the jail business because it's all about asset utilization. And even if you start having lower crime rates, you're going to still have the cost of that jail, and the only way you're going to be able to cover it is you've got to start arresting more people. So just something to be considerate of. But again, I just appreciate all your dedication to this and support the fact of doing the study and taking strong consideration of the returning home. Thank you.
Thank you. One more speaker.
Hi, I'm Clint Schneckloth. I live in Fayetteville, East Fayetteville. And I wanted to thank all of you for this kind of conversation and the ongoing way in which everybody's been engaging it. I've had maybe the most fun talking to Harvey because he reads all the books that I recommend to him, which is pretty wild. But what I wanted to mention is, one, that a really large percentage of why people are in our jail actually has to do with the rate by which we can process them through the prosecution system. And you probably know this, maybe you don't, that both the prosecutor's office and the defender's offices sought larger staff last year and funding from the state. And they asked for 9, and they got 2 in both offices. So they end up with way over workload in those offices to try to process all the cases, which is one of the reasons why there's overcrowding in the jail. So I'd like you to consider thinking creatively about how the county or other resources might fund those offices so that they're not overworked, because it would be a lot less expensive to actually hire people to be in those offices and process the cases than it would be to be housing so many extra hundreds of people in the jail. That's one piece. And then the second is, I'd like you to really think creatively about our collective safety and well-being in this county. I don't think that it's actually ultimately going to be safer or more healthy in our county to house more people in jail, because what they're doing is they're going into jail, they're not getting any resources for recovery, they're being released, and while they've been held, they've been exposed to the population that's committing the crimes in this county in the first place. So if we expand the jail, there's a very great likelihood that what that will effectively do is increase crime in the county rather than decrease it. That's a huge deal. And then that would be on you. You would have made the decision to fund a process to create more criminals in our county. What I'd love to see is for the county leadership to take responsibility for part of what is your constitutional responsibility, which is the public safety and health of our county. And health, it used to be more on the plate of the counties than it is now, but it could be again. You know, we used to have like mental health hospitals and other kinds of resources that were funded by the counties. Now all we fund is roads and jails. But you have the opportunity and the space to do much more creative than that, like the Crisis Stabilization Unit, and then this committee that hasn't met yet, but we keep hearing that it's going to meet, that could think really creatively about getting the prosecutor and the defender and the sheriff and the judge and everybody else who has some kind of responsibility and say in that to work together so that you and I and all of us in the county are safer and spend less money so I can take my kids out to eat. So thank you.
Time's up, sir. Thank you. Time is up. So, thank you. Hang on.
Mr. Chair, just want to clarify, the motion on the floor is a motion to postpone indefinitely items 6, 7, and 8 on tonight's agenda. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And is that you understood the second? Okay, just wanted to clarify that that's what we were voting on.
Are you ready for the question?
I'm going to make a motion that we
Ma'am, Justice Harbison, push the mic, please.
Thank you. I'm going to make a motion that we continue the discussion so that we hear the information that all of these people have.
Is there a second?
No. Okay, no, I don't. Well, I know we got a motion on the floor.
This would be a motion to suspend the rules
All
to
right,
increase.
suspend the rules and let the public continue to comment for another 10 minutes. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. John Comstock, Rogers, Arkansas. I'll take just a minute or two. I've written you all a lengthy letter, and I appreciate the fact I think several of you have read it, and I won't repeat what I have in there. Just know on each one of those points, and more that you and others would come up with, if that coordinating committee met and tossed those out on an agenda item one by one and talked through them, I think you would come up with what was mentioned as creative solutions to this problem, a piece here, a piece there. What can you do right now? Besides forming the committee, and let some advocacy folks be in it. I'm from Rogers. Let some Washington County folks, I understand that. But you've got great people back here that are doing so much work to try to provide information to help you make the right decision. Either let them be a formal member of the committee, or at least have an advocacy community advisory group that can participate in those discussions. But what can you do right now? The ombudsman position. You can create that position. You can have an ordinance drafted to create that position, fund that position. Let somebody go start working with that jail population right now to help the sheriff. The sheriff is doing his best. The folks running the jail are doing their best. But let somebody else, independent of that operation, go through those folks that are coming through the jail and make recommendations about release. Because you talk about the 200 that are being released, it's not like these people are, rabid-ridden individuals. These are people that are low risk, need to be released from jail. They're not a threat to our safety. They're not causing potential, safety issues for us. The last thing I would just say is, I know we've talked about not one, and I agree, nobody wants to be accused of being naive, but you can also say, I would like to once take the high ground in terms of, we in this country, we have 400 pretrial detainees. These folks haven't been convicted. Studies say if they're in jail for 3 days or longer, the potential for them to commit a crime has increased. So I would say to you, jail is part of the problem. Incarceration is actually part of the problem. And there's studies that support that, and you can say, you know what? Let's give value to let's give adherence to a core value, presumption of innocence. People talk about that as if, when I use it sometimes, people accuse me of being naive, presumption of innocence. No. Do we believe in it? And if we do, let's do something to show folks that we actually believe in presumption of innocence and take a high road. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Moore, Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've obviously been in front of you guys before. I've been in this conversation since January and done a lot of education. And I go back to, at the end of the day, with my background, and I appreciate some of the thoughtful questions that have come up from you guys, from Duncan and Yanez especially, in regard to like the study, and I know Ann's had some support of that as well. We can throw around all kinds of recommendations or throw things on the wall and see how they stick, but at the end of the day, we do need to do this external long-term study, and it's not going to take so long that it's going to kick the can down the road, as I've heard mentioned. It's going to do the right things and do our due diligence and get data behind us on making recommendations. One of the institutions that we talked to, the JMI, that's going to get you a recommendation on Wednesday, one of the first things that they have such sophisticated modeling, he already went and looked at the Bureau of Justice statistics, and he actually said the U.S. population, which we over-incarcerate versus any other country in the world, we have 229 beds per 100,000. In Arkansas, we're like the number 4 incarcerator in the U.S. We are incarcerating at 291 beds per 100,000. In Washington County, take a guess at how many beds we have per 100,000. 329 beds per 100,000. I like to make decisions based on facts and data. To me, it sounds like we have an incarceration problem in our county. Pulaski County, who has a whole different population to us, they have a lot more violent crime. They only have 307 beds per 100,000, and they're one of the counties that's actually authorized a study and is working with one of these external auditors to go and fix some of their problems and to look into their judicial process. So if they're doing it and they actually have less beds per 100,000, then we probably should think about that really heavily. Additionally, I want to say it is absurd that we have people sleeping on the floors. We should have already fixed this issue. We've been talking about this that I'm aware of for 6 months, and it makes me want to cry because the fact is we're not sticking ideas on the wall. There are other jurisdictions that have done some of these things, and there's data behind it that actually says that these things work, that these things aren't pie in the sky, they're not Pollyanna, they're actual data. And I'm going to read some things to you guys. So Ms. Harbison, J.P. Harbison, you brought up a great point when they showed us that 7-year trend. In 2013, what happened nationwide is that pretrial incarceration grew 436% from the 1970s to 2013, and the growth has continued unabated since 2013 on pretrial incarceration in our nation. Let's see. Going back to something that John Comstock said, studies suggest that as time goes by, defendants lose their jobs, homes, become disconnected from potential sources of support, such as family, community organizations like churches. Academic research has found that pretrial detention reduces future employment earnings by 25%.
Your 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I have a lot of other data points, though, that actually back up some of these things we could do right now today.
Wonderful.
I'll send them to you on email.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Koger. I manage a small nonprofit in Springdale called the Arkansas Justice Collective. I, believe it or not, the Honorable Mr. Lemming and I agree on something that we both want studies. We both think that population may be a factor. I do think there are a gazillion other factors. The Sheriff's Department has continually increased the price of this jail since the initial estimate. They said there had been multiple studies. We saw a single PowerPoint presentation that was co-authored with the company that was going to make millions building this jail. And there are plenty of other causes to this problem than mere population. So I want to highlight something. My nonprofit later this month will release a report that will show that Fayetteville, Arkansas has arrested 284% more people for mere possession of marijuana in the last 10 years. The population of Fayetteville has increased about 15% in that same period of time, so there are a gazillion other streams that we could be looking at. It's worth pointing out that people of color are in particular subject to the violence of the state. The Drug Task Force officers of the Fayetteville Police Department, 47% of their felony arrests are of black people in a city that's about 7% black. There's all kinds of reasons that we need studies, we need thorough reviews of all the different problems that are generating this particular problem. And I hope that y'all will take the time to do that and not make this decision tonight. And I encourage you to listen to Ms. Sue Madison when she says that this needs to be not a special election, but something that people are actually going to show up for, people that that need to show up for it and who are going to be impacted by this.
How much time do we got?
Hi, my name's Abel Tomlinson. I strongly oppose building a new jail, and I think everyone should oppose it across the ideological spectrum. From compassionate people that care about our brothers and sisters being locked up far too much, far too long, to economically conservative people that think we shouldn't be wasting money, tax dollars, especially almost $40 million to build a new jail. I mean, there's a growing awareness that we have a mass incarceration problem. Some estimates say we're spending $80 billion a year incarcerating people. Other estimates say that's actually underestimate. If you include all these other things, it's $180 billion a year. And there's a great video on the internet of Jeff Bridges, I think, and some girl in the audience. It's from a TV show or something. They say, well, why is America aren't we the #1 country in the world? And he's like, no, we're the #1 at incarcerating people and military spending. That's what we're #1 at. And a lot of other statistics, we're not #1. Other countries have more freedom than us in a lot of ways. And we really need to be thinking about this more creatively and really anything besides building a new jail. It's counterproductive. I mean, we lock people up and they come out worse off. They can't get a job. They're more likely to be addicted. They get PTSD from solitary confinement or being in prison too long. It destroys people. They can't live normal lives afterward, just like war does. War destroys people's minds and they can't function, and a lot of them commit suicide. We really need to be thinking of alternative things. Bail, changing the bail thing. A lot of poor people not being able to get out for just a few $100s. And so it's disproportionately affecting poor people. Certainly looking at pretrial release, there's actually, and we talk about studies, there's actually a really important Stanford study that everyone should look up by Professor Lawrence Wine from 2015, and he looked at LA County in California. California had something, a law or a court case that said that the California prison system had to reduce their prison population 25%. And so that exploded the jail populations, the county jails in California. And the Stanford professor looked at LA County and really looked at what can be done to reduce this overcrowding of these jails. And he said pretrial release was a big one. Another one that nobody's mentioned here, and he thought this was the biggest one, it's called split sentencing. And I can't fully explain it to you. You should look up the study yourself. But it's something about, for low-level felony people, you should split the jail time with community supervision or something. But the study says that this reduced the jail population 20%, and it reduced recidivism 7%. So if anything else I said, just please look up that Stanford study by Professor Lawrence Wine and do anything besides building a new jail. Thank you.
Next speaker.
How many do you want?
Well,
Yes, my name is Lou Sharp, and I'm from Tawnytown, Arkansas, and this morning I Googled pretrial detainees in rural communities just to see what I could find, and so I will finish part of the report that Sarah Moore did, because pretrial detainees are a problem across the United States. And, you know, if we can come up with a study and then start doing some pretrial services, because some other states, Maine and Texas, they're using risk assessment tools that can identify those that are brought to jail to see who's suitable for pretrial supervisions. And this gives judges another option just besides setting a bail amount that the defendants can't afford. And so then they sit in jail. And just, you know, I'm sitting there and returning home, and I'm wondering if our judges now are referring people to returning home. And if that's thrown out there as an option, it seems like, you know, it seems like a good program. So I hope, you know, that this study, in fact, is done. Pretrials, coming up with programs for pretrial supervision means that the defendants, and very often they're poor, they're going to have access to treatment and services and regularly report and get some assistance so they don't end up just sitting in jail. And in Maine, where they're doing this, they're using a risk assessment and on all defendants, and they're assessing them for risk of failing to appear, for rearrest and violent rearrest based on factors in the records that don't require an interview. So they're able to assess most defendants within 24 hours to see if they're suitable for release under appropriate conditions, such as returning home. So I certainly think those are areas we should look at, because so many people are in jail because they can't afford the bonds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We ready for the question?
Yes.
Okay. Let me make sure I get it right and everybody understands it. The motion was to suspend indefinitely items 6, 7, and 8. Is that correct, Mr. Duncan? Yes. Okay. All in favor, raise your right hand. Are you in favor of the motion?
Motion to, a favor to suspend it for definitely?
To table it indefinitely is what.
The motion is to suspend indefinitely, which means essentially the 3 ordinances written are dead.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask if Justice Yanez, who made the original motion, would consider, Mr. Duncan, I'm sorry, if they would consider an amendment to that motion to actually put a specific time as opposed to indefinitely.
That's not the motion.
No.
motion is to squash all 3.
Right.
Is to get rid of
They're
it.
gone forever. Yeah, we'd have to have a new motion.
That's not what he just said. He said
The
to
motion
suspend
is
it
to
indefinitely.
suspend the 3 proposed ordinances indefinitely. If the motion passes, we start from square one. All in favor, raise the right hand.
We don't even know what we're voting on. That's not what she.
Just to clarify, can you explain what suspending and tabling indefinitely
According to
mean?
Robert's Rule of Order, they're gone.
Trash.
It's the same as killing the motion when you suspend it indefinitely.
So what are we going to do a study for if it's killed?
We're going to start over with a new ordinance.
Okay.
All in favor of the ordinance, raise the right hand. 1, 2, 3. Those opposed? 2. The chair votes affirmative so that they are suspended indefinitely, and we'll start over. Justice Harbinson, item 9.
Okay, I've brought, I want to do an RFQ, a request for a quote to do an assessment of the Washington County criminal justice system. I want us to put out and send letters out to firms that do evaluations. I've asked the judges for them to present firms. The group that's here tonight have a couple of firms, and that then we decide which firms that we want to, we'll have to vote to determine what firm we want to come in and do the evaluation. And I would like for that to come to the full quorum court. I don't know that we want to do it in committee. But I'm going to make a motion that we send this to finance tomorrow to look at how we might finance this. This is my motion, that we request firms to present and how much they're going to charge and how long it's going to take and what they are going to do. You know, what I think needs to be done might not be what Harvey thinks needs to be done. So we need to decide what is meant by an assessment of the criminal justice system. You know, some of the circuit judges I've talked to, they feel that if it's an independent firm that's going to make an objective evaluation of the system, you know, we don't want to politicize this in any way. We just want the facts so that we can look at, you know, maybe the prosecutor needs 10 more people. I mean, this may be what comes out of this study, that, or the public defender needs more people, or that we need more judges. Look at the efficiency and how that we can not have so many people in jail. Now, you know, they could come up and say, you need a jail. I mean, that could be part of their recommendation. But, you know, I would like, now,
Before we continue, could you state the motion clearly and concisely, and let's see if we can get a second?
all right, a request for a quote to do an assessment of the Washington County criminal justice system. That includes the jail, that includes the courts,
Okay,
that includes the prosecutor.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
Okay. Now, discussion on the motion. Justice Jacobs.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to state that earlier, Ms. Coger had said that they were waiting on a report from Wednesday, is it? It should be prepared?
Wednesday, and I have a
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Wait a minute. This group needs to discuss it, ma'am. Thank you.
No, I was just saying that they've been the ones that have done the research and found the first firm that is willing to come in and do the assessment. And so they had also contacted and researched a second firm and she stated earlier that information will be prepared and ready for us by Wednesday.
Okay, well, I think we need to put our RFP together.
So that's
We need-
by tomorrow night.
We haven't,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm done.
okay, we need to put the RFP in. Do you write that? How do we write that?
So you all can appropriate money for an assessment, but you don't have the power to enter into a contract or actually physically pay something. So what you need to do is ask the judge to put together an RFQ and to select a firm, a request for qualifications, and select a firm to do this, and you will need to appropriate the money to do so.
And then, and I have lots of questions about the process, and I'm not opposed to the process. We have to figure out how to select the firm. We have to fund the study, and then we have to determine what we're going to do with it, because we as a court can't tell any elected official how to do his job. So be mindful of, I mean, we could do a study and come up with some grand ideas that at the end of the day are grand ideas.
This is why these stakeholders need to be involved in this,
Okay,
because they're the ones that are doing the job.
Well, and I get it, but like I said, we need to be mindful that we can't tell them, we can get them involved, but we can't tell them how to do the job.
All we can do is pay for it.
All we got to do is protect the fisc.
That's all we can do.
So if I could restate, is the motion to take the issue to, you restate, tell me what the motion is.
Quote or qualifications, a request for qualifications to do an assessment of the Washington County criminal justice system, which includes everything, that, and make recommendations to this court, but they need to be involved in it. You are right. We can do all of this, and if they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. But I think they want to be efficient and they want to be responsible to the public of what's going on. If we're not going to build a jail, but part of this could be that we need a jail. So, and I'm willing for the county judge, if he will, to put out an RFQ to several companies. I hope he would take suggestions from those people that are involved of what companies to put on the list to send their request to.
So we're going to go to the quorum court and request this of the judge, and then we're going to go to budget and finance
To finance it or
to
see
to
what
see
we
if
can
we
do.
can pay for it.
That's right.
Okay, we'll try to sort this out.
May I make a suggestion? May I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead.
My suggestion, J.P. Harbison, would be that, and for the committee, would be that you forward this on for consideration to finance and budget for tomorrow.
Right.
And that finance and budget come up with a number that says we are willing to and will commit to paying up to such and such dollar amount. That then allows the county judge to put out an RFQ, and he can do so, and as he always will with these, we'll get input from the stakeholders, the other elected officials, and even from the quorum court to say, here are the things that we're hoping this particular firm that is utilized will do. And then once the judge knows the amount up to the certain amount that can be spent, the RFQ can go out, then a firm can be selected, and that can go forward with that, with the knowledge that there's a certain amount of money that's been earmarked for this particular project.
Okay, let me ask will they present, the companies that are selected, the county judge will select these? Or who's going to select who does the study?
The county judge will, because only the county judge can enter into a contract. And so
Take a guess and see how much money you want to give him.
you'll have to come up with an amount and some specifics on what it is you're wanting, and then an RFQ will go out. There will be a day that these, and this is all public. Public's always welcome to come when we do these openings. There we'll have a day that they present their qualifications, and then there will be a group that makes a determination on which group is utilized, and then the work will begin.
Could our criminal justice coordination committee, whoever's on that, be involved in this?
That would be up to the judge, but I would imagine that those people would all be involved.
Okay, well, do I need to amend the motion to be sent to finance for tomorrow? I would like it to,
What I have is a motion to send the assessment of the criminal justice system, the issue of the assessment of the criminal justice system to finance and budget. I think that would suffice to put it on tomorrow's agenda so that it can be discussed at finance tomorrow, and the finance and budget committee can then vote on a set amount that they're willing to pay, to
okay,
spend.
thank you.
Justice Yanis.
Thank you. I wouldn't even notice where to start, how much the study would cost. Could there be a bidding process for it?
So there can be, what you're looking at, so you got to understand that there's the way that purchasing works for the county. Yes, there is bidding on certain services. But when you're looking at professional services, you don't bid on professional services. You request there are certain things that are exempt from bidding, and professional services is one of those. And so I'd have to go and look back at the law to see I mean, we'd have to clearly make sure that it's either a bid or an RFQ, but typically on professional services like this, you're looking at a request for qualification so that you know that whomever you hire is qualified to do what you're asking them to do. It's not like bidding on like commodities. When we buy a commodity, we do take bids. But in situations like this, a lot of times you do an RFQ because of the nature of what you're asking for. And with that, a lot of times these companies will come in with an RFQ and also tell you kind of what it would cost. I mean, there's no secret to that. You're just not held to a certain dollar amount because of what you're asking for.
Justice Duncan.
So we could make it for $5, and then people could come back and quote us and say, no, the price is going to be $67,000 or $100,000 or whatever the price is going to be, and then we award the business that way.
You can, but I don't think you're going to get very many responses if the quorum court's only saying they're going to pay $5. Because there's going to be a lot, these companies that come in and do this, there's a lot that goes into putting forth these qualifications. There's a lot of time they spend and money to let us know who's qualified. And so I will have a better answer for you exactly tomorrow night on this particular issue. But it may be a bid, but it also may just be a request for qualification so that we know kind of, there just needs to be money appropriated. It's kind of like what we do. If you do legal services or engineering services, I mean, there are certain things that are exempt from bidding, but you do have to get qualifications to make sure that you're hiring someone and choose someone that's qualified.
The figure 150,000 has sort of been a ballpark figure for one of these firms to come in and do what they can do. I mean, they're going to tell you how long it's going to take them to do this, and but this is just a drop in the bucket of what it would cost to build the jail right now. So if we can come up with other alternative ideas on how to handle, we may just come up with something that we need to separate, have a building for women and a building for men. Who knows? Anyway, 150,000 is sort of a ballpark figure. It could be less, but it's not going to be any $600,000, okay? But we are talking about somewhere about 100, 150, 175. Thank you.
Justice Jenkins.
Thank you. Can we find out if there are grants available for a project like this through our county? I can't remember her name. I remember listening to the meeting last, is it Cheryl? Yeah, could we talk to her maybe and have her look into it tomorrow before we meet?
Sure.
Just to see what kind of grants there are, maybe do a little research.
Sure, we can ask. I don't know that 1 day lead time is going to be enough because it's not as easy as just going and looking for something on the
Like a
list. There's
database
what
or
goes into
something.
it, but certainly something we'd utilize.
Okay, thank you.
Justice Hires.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could also take a look at what Pulaski County is spending on their current consultation, and that would also give us a ballpark figure as well.
Other discussion? We don't need public comment on this. You ready for the question? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No? All in favor, raise their right hand. All opposed, raise their hand. The vote's 4-1, the motion passes. What else is on this agenda? It's now time for public comment. And we have a 3-minute time limit. Is there 12 minutes total?
12 total.
12 minutes total. Go.
Beth Koger, 3661 Embry Drive, Fayetteville, Arkansas. The people who will give me the proposal on Wednesday are called the Justice Management Institute, and I have a handout that I'd like to, if I may, when I'm through speaking, may I hand it out to the court so you can see this? It gives a little background information. They told me that the study could probably be done within depending on the amount of cooperation they get from all the different departments of our county. It can be done maybe in 6 months, but they can tell us more about the time limit when they actually get here to see. And both the people that I've talked to, the JFA and the JMI, are willing to come and present to the quorum court at any time, just whenever you're ready to hear from them. And as to grants, yes, there are grants available. The John D. and Catherine D. McDonald Foundation has grants available for issues like this, and also the Vera Institute, that's VERA. And I've looked at them online. I have not talked to them. So I'd like to hand these out, please.
Did they mention their cost in here?
They'll have it to you Wednesday.
Okay.
This is just kind of so you'll know something about it.
Are you finished?
I'm finished, yes, sir.
Okay, next speaker. Next speaker. Without objection, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.